Have you ever noticed how much of your life you can lose thinking about something that has not happened yet? You can wake up with a perfectly normal day in front of you, and within a few minutes, your mind is already somewhere else. You're thinking about a conversation that might happen, wondering how something is going to turn out, or trying to solve a problem that you cannot actually solve today. Now, I know what that feels like. And I think Jesus knew exactly what that feels like too. That is why something he said in Matthew 6 has always stood out to me. Jesus said, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself." Now, Jesus was not telling people who had easy lives to stop inventing problems. He was talking to ordinary people like you and me who have real reasons to worry. Families to feed, bills to pay, uncertainty about the future, and lives that can change very quickly. So when Jesus told them not to worry about tomorrow, he was not dismissing what they were going through. He was teaching them how to carry it. And I think there is something in that lesson that you and I need today. You see, Jesus tells people listening to him to look at the birds. They do not know where tomorrow's food is coming from, yet they are fed. Then he points to the flowers growing in the field. They are temporary and fragile, yet God has covered them with beauty. Then Jesus brings the lesson back to us. If God pays that much attention to things we barely notice, why would you believe he has stopped paying attention to you? That is really what Jesus is teaching. He's not saying nothing difficult will ever happen. He's telling you that whatever happens, you are not facing it outside the care of God. That matters because worry has a way of convincing us that everything depends on us. We start thinking that if we can just look far enough ahead, consider every possibility, and prepare for every outcome, maybe we can protect ourselves from being hurt or surprised. But there is always another possibility. You know, you could spend hours trying to answer questions today that today simply cannot answer. Maybe you have one of those questions right now. You've done everything you know to do, but you still do not know how something is going to turn out. That is usually the moment when your mind starts filling in the blanks. And have you ever noticed? Your mind rarely fills those blanks with the best possible outcomes. Jesus brings us back to the day we are actually living in. He's not telling you to ignore tomorrow. There is nothing wrong with planning ahead. The problem begins when tomorrow takes so much of your attention that you're no longer living in today. There is a difference between preparing for something and worrying about it. You see, preparation eventually reaches a point where you have done what you can do. Worry never reaches that point. It just keeps going. That's why Jesus does not simply tell us to become better worriers. He tells us to trust the Father. When Jesus taught his disciples to pray, he told them to ask for their daily bread. I think there is something so beautiful about that. He did not teach them to ask God to guarantee everything they would need for the next 20 years. He taught them to trust God for what they needed today. That does not come naturally for most of us, does it? We would rather know that everything is covered. We want to know what happens in the next month and next year. We want to know the people we love are going to be okay. We want some guarantee that the plan we have made will actually work. Jesus keeps bringing us back to today. Maybe because today is the only place you can actually follow him. You cannot obey Jesus tomorrow yet. You cannot love someone tomorrow yet. You cannot make tomorrow's decision today when you do not have tomorrow's information. But you can walk with Jesus right now. And I think sometimes we exhaust ourselves because we're trying to carry tomorrow with strength that God gave us for today. Then we wonder why we're so tired. Maybe you do not need enough strength right now for everything that could happen. Maybe you need enough strength for the thing that is actually happening. That changes the way you look at faith, doesn't it? You know, Faith does not mean you always feel certain about the future. Sometimes faith is simply saying, Jesus, I do not know how this turns out, but I'm going to stay with you while I find out. And I think that kind of faith is much more real than pretending you are never afraid. Jesus never seemed interested in people pretending with him. Look at Peter. Now, you remember, there's a moment when Peter sees Jesus walking on the water and asks Jesus to let him come out of the boat. Jesus tells him to come, and Peter actually steps onto the water. Now, for a moment, he walks toward Jesus. Then, Peter notices the wind. And I actually love that detail because the wind was already there. The storm did not suddenly begin after Peter stepped out of the boat. What changed was what had Peter's attention. Once the storm became bigger in Peter's mind than the one standing in front of him, he started sinking. And I think we do something similar, don't we? The problem becomes all we can see. It may be a real problem. Jesus never asked Peter to pretend there was no storm, but Peter was not alone in it. And you know what? Neither are you. Sometimes the lesson is not that Jesus will immediately remove the storm. Sometimes the lesson is learning that the storm does not get the final word while Jesus is standing there with you. That is also why prayer matters. And prayer does not have to sound religious. You do not have to pretend that you trust perfectly when you do not. You can actually tell Jesus that you're worried. You can admit that you're having trouble letting go of something. You can tell him that you keep thinking about the same problem and you do not know how to stop. He already knows. Jesus said that your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Think about what that means. God is not waiting for your prayer so he can finally learn what is happening in your life. Prayer does not give God new information. Prayer is bringing yourself back into the relationship. It is remembering that you are talking to someone who already knows what you're carrying. And then Jesus gives us something practical to do. He tells us to seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness. Now, I think that's one of the most important parts of the lesson because Jesus moves our attention away from what we cannot control and toward what we can actually do. You may not control how tomorrow turns out, but you can decide who you are going to be today. You can decide whether you're going to follow Jesus in the situation you have been given. That may mean having a conversation you've been avoiding. It may mean admitting you were wrong. It may simply mean doing the next responsible thing and refusing to spend the rest of the day imagining 10 different endings. You do not need to know everything to do what's right in front of you. And I think that is where peace actually begins. Not when you finally control the future, but when you stop requiring the future to cooperate before you trust God. Maybe today you've been asking God to show you exactly how everything is going to work out. I get it. I understand that. I would like that too. But sometimes Jesus does not give us the whole road, does he? He gives us enough light to take the next step. So maybe the question today is not, Jesus, how is my entire life going to work out? Maybe it is simply, Jesus, how do I follow you through today? And you know what? That's a question you can actually live. Tomorrow will come. There will be another decision, another problem, another unexpected turn, and probably another reason to worry. But Jesus will still be there. That's the part we forget when we try to imagine the future. We picture ourselves standing in tomorrow's problem with today's strength. We forget to put Jesus in the picture. Whatever tomorrow brings, you will not arrive there before God does, I can assure you. So deal with today. Walk with Jesus today. And when tomorrow becomes today, walk with him then too. Maybe you cannot see very far down the road right now. You know what? That's okay. Jesus never said you had to see the whole road. He just said, follow me. Beautiful, isn't it? Friends, God bless every single one of you. And God bless everyone you love.